Rocky Ford Bridge, which is more commonly known as Bird Bridge in Emporia, Kansas, is the site of a tragedy, honestly. There's no other way to describe it. On July 17th, 1983, Sandra Bird's body was discovered along with her car down in the river. It was initially ruled a traffic accident, but some other events would later happen that would make people think, you know, maybe it wasn't actually an accident. About 4 months later or so, on November 4th, another tragedy occurred when Marty Anderson was brutally murdered by a masked gunman after he and his wife had pulled over with their children in the car. His wife, Lorna, said that she had felt sick, so she had gotten out of the car to throw up and lost her car keys, and she called her husband out to help her find them when a masked gunman emerged, demanded Marty's wallet, and then shot him to death. People found it kind of suspicious. Lorna Anderson was not known for being the most truthful person, according to many reports. She had been rumored to have many affairs in the town, including an affair with Tom Bird, the preacher of one of the Lutheran churches in town, and the husband of Sandy Bird, who had died. Yeah, I mean, it's a lovely location. It just sucks that it was, you know, so tragic. Especially because, like, in a lot of ways, we don't actually know what happened, you know? A lot of the evidence surrounding what eventually was believed to be Sandy Bird's murder, a lot of that evidence is circumstantial. I mean, again, they actually initially ruled it as a traffic accident. They thought that she had lost control of her car and had gone into the river. Which is pretty understandable. Oh yeah, it's very much a winding road. I could completely understand, especially because it was dark out, you know, like this, like whatever happened at night. So if she, you know, lost control of her car, I mean, it was night. It would not surprise me at all if she just couldn't see where she was going. But again, there were a lot of things that made people think, especially like even one of the state highway troopers, his name is John Rule, he actually thought to himself that it wasn't originally a traffic accident because he had found blood on some of the trees and on the bridge and under the bridge that made no sense as to why that blood would be there if it was a traffic accident. He found her watch underneath one of the trees that was right by where some of the blood was found. One of the other things that I thought was really interesting too is that a lot of people said that Sandy always wore a seatbelt, so why would she have been ejected from the car?
Yeah, that would be odd, because it was said that, you know, they found her floating body.
Yeah, her floating body. And actually, I mean, whenever they did the initial investigation too, the autopsy came back as a lot of the injuries that she had were consistent with a car crash. So after Marty Anderson was killed, and people really kind of didn't believe Lorna's story, there was somebody, I don't remember the exact quote, but one of the articles said, she makes up so many stories and stuff like that, it's kind of hard to believe her. After Marty Anderson died, Tom Bird actually emerged as one of Lorna's biggest supporters, which was interesting because there had been rumors for a while that they'd been having an affair. A lot of people said that they were electric together. They had like pet names for each other. There were also some letters where Tom specifically said like, I love you and stuff, which he said were a Christian love, which makes sense. He is a pastor, you know, and she was the secretary of the church. So they were obviously both very involved in church life. People really believed that they were having an affair, and so they actually asked that Sandy Bird's body be exhumed. And on this second autopsy, the other doctor, Dr. William Eckert, he found more injuries on her that were actually consistent with self-defense, so he believed that somebody had attacked her. She had like some fractures and stuff along like her wrists that were really consistent with self-defense injuries. So then people started thinking, oh, well, maybe this wasn't a traffic accident, you know, like there was no evidence that she had tried to swerve or brake to stop herself from going into the river. And some people have posited like it was suicide or she was depressed and such. And like she had admitted to friends apparently that she was worried that her marriage was ending. But she had also just gotten a promotion at the university and would actually be like working more in an area that she really loved. So the night that she died, she and her husband, Tom Bird, had actually gone to, I believe it was his church office, to have a drink together, and then she went to her university office and he wanted to stay at his office so he could work on the coming week's sermon. The next day she was found dead in the river. So the theory goes like this: Tom Bird and Lorna Anderson were having an affair, and instead of getting divorced from their spouses, which some people say that Tom felt that it was better to kill their spouses rather than get a divorce because that was more Christian-like, they decided to kill their spouses. They had actually attempted to solicit somebody to kill Marty Anderson a few months earlier, right before Sandy died, and allegedly when they were discussing this, Tom Bird said that there was a road in Emporia where if somebody was drunk or drugged, it would be very easy to have them fall off the road and into the river.
Oh, that's kind of suspicious.
It is kind of suspicious, but again, like, there's nothing linking him to this murder directly other than the fact that there's an animal of some sort over there. Is it a dog? It's a dog.
Hold on, pause for a brief animal rescue.
That's what I do. I mean, it's usually cats, but... Hi, buddy. Oh, you're pretty. Hi. Can I get a picture of you so that I can put you on Lost and Found? You got a collar on. Hi. Aren't you so sweet? Hello. Do you have a tag on your collar? I think I should probably call them, right? Like, that's what should happen?
Yeah, probably. That's
To an automated voicemail. I guess you'll leave a voicemail. Hi, my name is William. I'm out at Rocky Ford Bridge shooting video, and I just found your dog. Are you leaving voicemails?
You anywhere, you always find something to rescue.
I'm so sorry. It just happens. I don't go out looking. Okay, that's a lie. I do sometimes go out looking for animals to rescue, but where there's a wasp there. That's not an animal I want to rescue. Yeah, let's recap. So, Sandy Bird died in July, and they ruled it as a traffic accident. 4 months later, Marty Anderson dies, and because of suspicious circumstances regarding that, and rumors of an affair between Tom Bird and Lorna Anderson, they reopened the case of Sandy Bird. Ended up believing that it was not a traffic accident, it was murder because they found like self-defense wounds and stuff. It eventually comes out that Tom and Lorna had actually conspired to have Marty Anderson killed earlier, even before Sandy Bird died. One of the things that was discussed at this was actually very similar to the way that Sandy had died, where Tom said, or allegedly said, that he knew of a place in Emporia where if somebody was drugged or drunk, they could go off the road into the river and it would just look like a traffic accident. That was very suspicious. They had also apparently put up $5,000 to have Marty Anderson killed at some point, but that never really came to fruition. So because of the rumored affair between Tom and Lorna, which Tom says that the affair did not start until after both of their spouses were dead in 1984, and that it never was as intense as Lorna had been describing it. Because of the affair and because of the suspicious nature of both Marty Anderson's death and then now Sandy Bird's death, Tom Bird and Lorna Anderson were put on trial. Tom Bird was eventually convicted of first-degree murder.
You're making me nervous, but I keep looking over there.
Yeah, it does, actually. I keep thinking like, oh, you've seen a ghost.
I keep thinking I hear something, so...
Listen, we're not even at the ghost part yet. Spoiler alert, we're talking about ghosts too. They eventually found Tom Bird guilty, both of soliciting to kill Marty Anderson and also first-degree murder of his wife, and he was put into prison for, I think it was something like 15 years to life. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I do know that I'm pretty sure he got a life sentence. But he's actually out on parole now, as is Lorna Anderson. They were both let out, and I think the mid-2000s to mid-20-teens. I don't have the exact dates memorized on those. What was that?
That was a sound.
That sure was a sound. Maybe it's another dog. Dog's back. Just great. Do you want to talk about ghosts with us?
Want to talk about the fact that we definitely heard a sound over there?
Yeah, let's talk about the fact that we definitely heard a sound over there, but we're going to ignore that. Like, do we know definitively that ghosts exist and that things are haunted? No. Do I always get a little spooked whenever I'm, you know, at a place that's purportedly haunted and I start hearing noises and suddenly dogs just appear out of nowhere? Yeah.
It's a little ominous.
It's a little ominous. It is a cute dog though, so I think we're probably okay. I'm gonna take it as a good sign. Definitely an old bridge. It is not a bridge I enjoy driving over, so I do not. But it's also supposedly haunted. And it's said to be haunted by Sandy Bird. People say that you can hear her screams and you can see her walking along the banks of the river and such at night. I've also heard that if you drive here at about midnight or so and you stop in the exact middle of the bridge, that like your car will mysteriously turn off. That there might also be handprints, but that might have also been like some other like ghost stories I've heard. There's a few different versions of it. Some people think that it's not actually Sandy Bird that's haunting the bridge. They actually, yeah.
I keep looking over.
You keep looking over there and I'm like, every single time I'm like, oh, we finally found proof of ghosts.
Something's making me a little uncomfortable that direction, which is pretty weird considering the noises that come from this side.
Obviously, like most people are like, yes, it's Sandy Bird, but I saw one that said it was an indigenous man around here, and then the other one that I really did not like reading about was saying that it was some sort of undetermined energy that likes people being spooked and freaked out.
I saw a lot of people who said that it feeds off of people looking for Sandy.
Which I think just sort of ties into the folklore surrounding this bridge. Like I said, it's an old bridge. It's not exactly the most welcoming type of bridge, so I think that it's perfectly natural that there would be a lot of stories. A lot of people say that you hear the screams. People have said that, you know, like they see figures walking along the banks, which to be fair, it is, you know, along a river. Those figures could be things like deer. One time I found a deer skeleton in the woods, so I know that there are deer. Not woods around here.
Real?
Yeah, deer are real. I can confirm, in fact, that deer are real. The two that I was seeing that was the most common was hearing her screams, which there are farms up here, so like there are a lot of animal noises. Again, I think that's, you know, like the folklore of it has really sort of affected our understanding of the area and the other things that are at play here. I don't know what kind of butterfly that was, but I liked it. It was pretty. A lot of teens, you know, like come out here, especially like during full moons or new moons or on Halloween. Yeah, I mean, whatever it is, the bridge definitely has a weird vibe to it, you know? It's the fact that it's not really constructed like a lot of other bridges I've seen of this size. It's on a gravel road. It's a very imposing bridge, and I think that the history surrounding it is tragic, but is also very interesting. I actually asked, my parents weren't living in Emporia at the time, but they were living in Kansas, and I asked them and my grandparents if they remembered it, and my grandparents remembered it. My parents didn't, but they were, you know, kids, teenagers, so it's not surprising, but my grandparents did remember. They didn't remember the details, but they remembered hearing about it. So it's definitely a fairly prominent part of Emporia history that I think in some ways the folklore surrounding it is actually more prominent than the actual history.
Whether or not it's true or not, people still believe those things, right? It's true to somebody.
It's true to somebody, and I think that that's something that should be included whenever we talk about the story.
I have to wonder about, you mentioned how she was known to wear the seatbelt. But I mean, I kind of wonder, you know, we don't really know what was going on in her head that night, right?
Yeah, there were a lot of things going on for her, you know, like again, like some reports that say that she had talked to her friends and was worried that, you know, like her marriage was ending, so they were having marital problems and such. But she had also just gotten a promotion, you know, something that she was very excited about.
I think there can be arguments both ways, but I think there's always something that we won't know, you know?
There's always going to be something that we don't know. We are here to talk about the folklore, and of course, you know, folklore a lot of times is things like ghost stories. One of the things that I always kept seeing was, legend says that a preacher murdered his wife on this bridge. And despite the fact that, like Tom Bird's maintained his innocence and stuff like that, he was, convicted of murdering his wife. And you can actually look up the murder case, so I'm not sure why they're always saying that, like legend says that a preacher murdered his wife here. Whether or not he actually murdered her here is a question, but the fact is that somebody did die here. So I'm not sure why this folklore has become a question of whether or not Sandy Bird died here, because she absolutely did. And I just think that that's a really interesting part of folklore, is that this story has become so mythologized within the community, which, I mean, it was a huge story whenever it happened. I mean, they went and made a TV movie called Murder Ordained, which you can find out by searching Google. So I'm not sure why they keep saying that it's reportedly they made a film. It's out there, it's on YouTube, it's called Murder Ordained. There is always, I think, some sort of element of truth to folklore. Even though the folklore says supposedly a preacher murdered his wife here and supposedly she haunts the bridge now, regardless of whether or not you believe in ghosts, and regardless of whether or not you believe that Tom Bird was innocent or guilty, like I said, like his case was really built on a lot of circumstantial evidence. There was nothing directly tying him to the case other than some no alibi and some suspicious sort of, I don't even know how to say suspicious, because I mean, the fact is he doesn't have an alibi, but there's also nothing tying him to this crime scene. He even said that he thought that potentially one of Lorna Anderson's ex-boyfriends had something to do with it. What we can say is that Tom Bird was found guilty of murdering his wife. He was found guilty of soliciting to kill Marty Anderson. Lorna Anderson was also convicted and found guilty of conspiracy to murder. Those are what we know, but again, a lot of that evidence was really circumstantial. So who's to say? Somebody did die here. And it's sad, and I think that we should acknowledge that it's sad, but sometimes folklore can twist stories and history in ways that makes it harder for people to understand the truth and for historians to figure out what happened. And fortunately, the story happened in a time where we have, some pretty decent records. We have a lot of newspaper articles and such about it. In fact, some of my favorite newspaper articles, one was written in 1986 by Scott Kraft for the LA Times, he came in, he wrote like the whole story. And then about 20 years later, he actually followed it up, where he actually went and talked to Tom Bird, and Tom Bird talked about the fact that he was still professing that he was innocent. Tom Bird even felt that the movie Murder Ordained, and in some ways Scott Kraft's article, was keeping him in prison and not eligible for parole. There's a lot of things that happen here, and there's a lot of reasons why this story became so fantastical. It became part of local folklore. And I think that, we should talk about this folklore more, but I think that we should also talk about how things like this really affect our understanding and our perceptions of history and the things that actually happened. I'm still not going to drive across this bridge, though.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not really, no thanks.
No.